Just testing to see if this video would upload. I want to get into, first of all, I hope all is well with you, and I hope you guys are fighting through your struggles. I hope God helps you through your struggles, and I hope you have a great day. On that note, for those who are interested in the subject of homelessness, it seems like once you're homeless, you're discarded. Society really frowns on homelessness. And, you know, all I hear is, I was homeless. I'm not homeless now, thanks to God and a friend of mine, Jocelyn. But society really frowns on homelessness. Remember, there's hurricanes, tornadoes, mudslides, fires, that cause people to become homeless and lose everything, their job, their community wiped out, their home wiped out. They don't have insurance, or the insurance aren't paying. They become homeless. People lose their job, can't get another job. They become homeless. Mental illness brings you to homelessness. Life will just beat you down, and you either fight and get over the top with some luck, thanks to God, and just being in the right place, right time, or having the right family, being born in the right, city, state, country. But I'm just talking about America for right now. And the other thing is being drug addicted. Drug addicted will bring you to homelessness. Ronald Reagan closed all the mental institutions. Why have they not opened up new mental institutions? So when you see a homeless guy with sores all over him, he's like 130 pounds, he's bent over at the waist, rocking back and forth, maybe with a needle sticking out of his arm, he needs to be involuntarily committed. And not permanently, but just till he detoxes and they can get this guy the proper help. Second, there's so many structures that are vacant that could easily be turned into shelters. And I mean a good shelter, not that barks at you like a correctional officer would in a prison, throws you out at 7 a.m, no matter what the weather conditions are, even though they're paying for the government and the state are paying for the building to be open all day. The staff's there all day, but they don't let the people stay there all day. And without being able to stay there all day, you can't get your crap together. And there's another portion of the theft of the billions of dollars. I remember Gavin Newsom saying he didn't know where, there was over $20 billion, and I don't know the exact amount, but he didn't know where the money went. What do you mean you don't know where the money went? I mean, that should be, if I stole $160 from homelessness and got caught and took it and got caught taking it, I would be arrested. I would be before a judge, and if I had a prior record, I would go to prison for a long time. If not, at least I would be probation out of the deal. What do you mean you don't know where the billions of dollars went? Okay, first of all, there's a lack of caring and investigating where this money went. B, the social workers suck. There's a couple of you that really do your job and really care, but there's a great many of you that want the salary, the title, but don't want to do any work. How do you not, if it's your job to be a social worker and to get this person from homelessness into a living establishment of some kind, maybe a boarding house, maybe a sober living house, maybe renting a room in someone's house, maybe getting their own apartment. Why don't they call up and say, hey, I have Alice here with me. Your rent is $650. You have a room for rent. I would like to make an appointment I'm a social worker for her, for us to come meet you. She gets a check, an SSI check or an SSA check of $1,200 a month, $1,300 a month. She's more than able to pay the rent. We would like to meet you. That's what a social worker does, and drives you to the appointment. If that don't work, they drive you to the next one. They make phone calls for you. They facilitate. They do their job. They get off their lazy ass instead of handing you a piece of paper and telling you to do this for yourself. And why do they throw you out at 7 a.m? How could anybody be walking around the street trying to get a place to live or trying to get a job and not having a home base? You need a home base, and it should be a caring and loving place. They should love people. It's very hard to deal with mentally ill people. I was homeless, and there was a portion of people, maybe 35 to 40%, that are drug addicted. The rest are not drug addicted. All right. Most of them are mentally ill. They can't get along with each other. They can't say, hey, Fred, Larry, let's put our checks together and get an apartment so we don't have to be homeless, because they can't get along with each other. That doesn't even come out of their mouth. They're mentally ill. So you got to understand, a mentally ill person does not have the brain that you have. They don't think the way you think. We all think differently, but they think very differently. And they're very hard to deal with. Their social skills are very hard to deal with. It's a near impossible situation when you become homeless to get out of it. Because why are they not taking these empty structures and turning them into shelters? Why have they not opened up mental institutions and involuntarily commit a person that's bent over at the waist with a needle sticking out of their arm? Why are these things not being done? I don't know. But all I know is, I got out of being homeless because I left California. California has about 150,000 homeless people. They say it's like 90,000, 100,000. It's more than that. I was out there. I know. People are living in their cars. They're living in RVs. They're living on the street. They're trying to get a bed in a shelter. Imagine getting kicked out at 7 a.m. and have to just walk around the city, and you don't get your check to the next month. You're broke, and you're walking around a city with a cell phone. Where do you go? Where do you sit? No places, restaurants or establishments want you to sit there. They don't want you in there. You're in the same clothes. Some shelters don't have laundry establishments. Why don't they have laundry establishments? Why don't they have a place where, the TV's on during the day, and they have social workers that really help you make phone calls and facilitate, and they have, drivers that drive the homeless person out to a place to live, or drive them out to a job site where they want to get a job. Some homeless people can get a job, but Trump has a very disdained view of homeless people, and I love Trump to death, but I think he's misguided on. I remember being in a shelter, and there was 7 of us. It was a day shelter, and there's social workers that are supposed to help you get a place to live or a job. And they had about 12 counselors, and the salaries are starting at $89,000. A case social worker gets about $150,000, a year. They're getting very good money. There's 12 of them, around 7 homeless people with black coffee in the morning. They say they can't afford cream and sugar. Why not? And they hand a piece of paper to you. I got a ride once I got a ride from this counselor to a place to live. But that the rest of the time they handed me a piece of paper and said, oh, these places might be for rent. This is where you can get soup, a soup kitchen. This is where you can get a meal. This is where you can get clothes. Why don't they take me to get clothes? Why don't they take me to these places? Why don't they feed lunch? Why are they getting all this money from the government, and they don't even consider doing these things? So you're like a dog, that's ran away from home and is stray. It's just like that. The dog's just running from house to house, street to street, wandering around. Oh, there's a stray dog. Well, that's how homeless people feel. And the inflation has gone through the roof, where people can't afford to even get an apartment. There should be no shortage of housing. There's so many empty, huge structures that are being paid for by the government, and they're just empty. Why are they not turned into shelters? Do you know how many people have lost their home in a hurricane, flood, tornado, fire this past year? You're talking hundreds of thousands of people. Where do they go? how do they get out of that? How do they get back on their feet? You don't have proper friendships. When I was homeless and I would see like 5 people going out to eat and they'd be a family, I'd be jealous because I don't have a family like that anymore. Homelessness destroys your friendships. It destroys every social structure you have in the community. And it's horrible. Now, there are those that are drug addicted. In drug addiction, I was drug addicted till God set me free from it. And drug addiction is horrible. It's you don't want to use drugs and then you end up using. You have no control of yourself. It's very hard to break an addiction. Some people, the grave, or prison is their end point. Other people are fortunate enough to have a very good family structure or some good friends, and they'd snap out of it with the help of, AA program, the help of God. I believe God helps the most. Without him, you're stuck, man. I'm not going to preach in this video, but you're making a real bad decision not inviting God to help you in every situation, because he's the one that really looks out for you and the one that could make openings for you that you can't make yourself. But the lack of caring of the social workers, the theft of money, the misallocation of money, the misallocation of the whole structure of the program. And these are easily fixable problems if they would have a Senate hearing and come to a conclusion where this is what we're going to do for homelessness. We're going to approach it this way. We're not going to continue to approach it the same way that we've been approaching it, because it doesn't work. And I'm talking billions of taxpayers' money are going to theft, going to non-caring social workers. A social worker should be able to, at the end of the month, to give a report for where they drove people, where they helped people make phone calls. This should be part of their structure as a social worker, to log these things in where they could be accountable at the end of the month. So if they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing for homeless people, you fire them and you get the next person, because there's so many caring people out there that would do a job right and would love to have a job as a social worker and love to really help people. But you got to understand, we're dealing with a very high inflation environment, and we're dealing with a structure of the way things have been going a certain way, and they're not working because they don't have any mental institutions open. Why not? There's so many mentally ill people all over the streets, all over the subways, all over every city. Why, if they do crime and they're homeless and they do crime, then throw them in jail. But if they're not doing crime, do not just throw them out at 7 a.m. and have them walk all over all day and expect them to get a job and a place to live. They don't do that. A social worker should pull, hey, Larry, Fred, come in here. Anthony, Larry, Fred, come in here. You 3 are going to get an apartment. If you 3 can't get along, the 2 of you could get along, and then we'll get somebody else. Anthony doesn't get along with the other 2, then Anthony will be out and we'll pull somebody else in. You 3, we're going to pull your checks together and we're going to get an apartment for you. We're going to get you out of the shelter. That's the object, is to move you to the next step up in life, to try to get you back to some semblance of life. For the mentally ill, they need really good psychologists and psychiatrists, because a lot of them are not being treated correctly. They're being misdiagnosed, or they're not getting on the proper meds, because mentally ill people are very hard to deal with. They're very antisocial. They're very self-absorbed, selfish people, and I don't know if they could help themselves because they're mentally ill. They don't get along with people. They blurt out yelling in the middle of nowhere. Just start yelling, talking to themselves. They argue with each other constantly. And they need to be treated with love, because a person like that is not in their right mind. And imagine not being in your right mind and not being able to control it. It's like, missing a limb. I have an amputated leg above the knee on my left side. I'll never walk again. So could you imagine never to walk again? How that would feel to be stuck in a wheelchair? I'm not crying the blues because I'm very blessed, and I pushed God to the point where I pissed him off so bad he had to take my leg for me to pay attention to him and to bring me to safety. Unfortunately, it was like that. I was so drug addicted, self-absorbed, not paying attention to him, and I knew better, and I got what was coming to me. So I can't cry the blues. I have to be grateful for every day that I have above ground. That's all I want to say about this in homelessness, that I wish President Trump had a real derogatory comment on homeless people, and I love him to death, but he's being misguided on. I wish somebody that was truly homeless could tell him how the shelters are run, how the social workers, imagine 12 social workers around 7 people, and they all get in a circle in the morning and they stand up, and the homeless people sit at the chairs in the middle, and they go around and say, how good this place is, and how, you don't have to be homeless, you can get out of it. Yeah, because we're looking for you to be that bridge, that to fill the void where we can't fill it. We can't make phone calls. We don't have a car. Most homeless people don't have cars. They don't have proper transportation, insurance, registration. Some people the people that aren't on SSI, please take them to the Social Security Bureau or get them signed up for, SSI, that they can get a check, because they're mentally ill. They can't care for themselves. They can't work. It's terrible to be like that. And a lot of it is not their fault. Some people just went crazy because life beat them down. They got a divorce, they lost their job, and their brain snapped, and they're never going to be the same. Some people have some really hard things happen to them. They've got their kids abducted, and they never got over it. And their husband passed away, and true story. And then they're stuck being homeless. Now they're in a shelter that throws you out at 7 a.m. with a bowl of cereal. There's a couple shelters that are open during the day, but the social workers that were there suck. They're horrible. They don't do their job. They don't care. They just, there was one place in Orange County that the Greyhound in Santa Ana, that the Greyhound bus, it holds 450 homeless people. That was run the best out of any shelter I've ever been in. But the social workers there still suck, and they didn't take people. They should have drivers to drive people to, some people have severe medical issues. They need to be, taken to the doctor, or transportation arranged where they can get transportation to get to the doctor's appointments. Have a social worker say, hey, you got these appointments this week, Joe, and we're going to take you to 2 of them, but these other 3 you got to make yourselves. This is what time they are. Here's a piece of paper written down where you need to be at what time. Here's your tokens for the bus to get there and to get back. Do something, and don't just suck off the government's money, the taxpayers' money. People work really hard and pay taxes. And taxes, everybody gets taxed to death. And the way, I'm not going to get into the whole government, how, there's so much mismanagement of money, but I'm just talking about homeless. And Gavin Newsom saying he didn't know where billions of dollars went. Why is he not arrested? Or at least taken into custody and interrogated? And because you're the governor and you disperse the funds through the state. So the Treasury said they cut a check to you. Well, you need to talk to the Treasury who they cut that check to for billions of dollars, then get those people and find out, what did you do with this money? Because if you can't account for it, you're going to go to jail. If you can account for it, then where'd it go? Because it didn't make it to the people that need it. The people that really need it are not getting it. They're not getting the proper help. And society has a real disdain. All they vision is a homeless person bent over at the waist with a needle sticking out of their arm. That's not what homelessness is about. There's a whole scope to homelessness that's very complex. That's every case is individually different. Some are drug addicted and screwing things up for the rest. Some are mentally ill, can't get along with people. They need help to maybe but they could live on their own. They could rent a room somewhere, and they could, cook their own food. Get them to the next step up, or try to get people pulled together to get an apartment, or drive people to their appointments. Earn your money, go to work, be productive. If you're a social worker, do your friggin' job, man. People need you. All of a sudden have no job. Now you got a social worker job. You're making around 90 grand a year to start. That's very good money. Now in California, that might not go too far, but it'll go far enough. But why don't you help people during the day? Why is it allowed that the shelter could get, millions of dollars from the government and hand you a piece of paper, or have 12 people standing around you and not making phone calls for you? Why don't they make phone calls for you? Why are they so lazy? What are they doing to earn, each of them around 100 grand, 150 grand, $80,000? What are they doing for this money? Imagine 12 people, a salary around, just put it around 100,000 each. Not even counting the ones that make, 150, just say 100,000, 12 people, that's a lot of money. And, imagine so many shelters, why is so many empty structures? The government is paying for these structures, but nobody's in them. Why don't they put people in them? Open up these, forget about building, high, like California, Los Angeles, built for hundreds of millions of dollars. They paid for these like luxury condos for 450 homeless people to live in. You got 150,000 homeless people. What is 450 structures going to do? And that's all you've done in the past decade, the past 10 years. Seriously, that's all you've done? Because they haven't done anything else. I lived out there. I was homeless. I had to experience it firsthand. I had to get out of California and go to a small town in South Dakota, Brookings, South Dakota, and where there's no homelessness, there's no shelter, there's no crime. It's very boring, but at least I have a place to live. I bathe, I shower, I go to the gym. I try to do the best I can. I have doctor's appointments. I try to do the best I can. I try to podcast. I hope you guys have enjoyed this podcast. And the solutions need to come from the government, because they're the ones that dictate the purse. They hand out the money, and when handing out the money, they need to put mandates on these places that they need to meet these mandates in order to get this money, or fire the whole crew of homeless people that work. I mean, at a homeless place. Fire them all and get all new people in there. Then, just restructure the place, or fire the bad ones. Once they get a job, they're not going to tell on each other. So somebody has to oversee the shelter, that it's being run correctly, and people are being driven, and phone calls are being made for them, so that they could get to the next step up, because there are homeless people that can function on a level up from just being in a shelter, and you need to help those people and target those people and bring them to a place where they can get an apartment and get a job. Take them to get a job interview, help them to go over the job interview with you before. You need to be a skilled person to be a social worker, and you need to care and have love, because if you don't have these things, you're worthless to society, and you're worthless to homelessness and the cause of homelessness. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you. God bless you, and have a great day.